Good morning, everyone, and welcome to News Extra. And we've had a number of fire incidents that have been happening here recently. A couple of house fires over in the Torrington area, along with multiple calls here in Gering and Scottsbluff. And so we thought it was a good time to bring in somebody from the Scottsbluff Fire Department. We have Anthony Murphy, Scottsbluff Fire Marshal, with us. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for the invitation. Glad to come in and talk with you about what's been going on.
So right now you've been running a certain number of calls out there right now, and there's some things that people can do to, well, lessen their chances of having a fire breakout. And of course, this being the holidays, people are cooking all the time. That's obviously one thing that people need to be cognizant of.
One of my favorite things about the holidays is the food too.
Understandable.
But yeah, so one of the things that we've really been running a lot of calls on lately, in addition to some of the carbon monoxide calls, several cooking fires, both Scottsbluff, Gering, and I guess I haven't heard what the cause is yet for the Torrington.
Yeah, we haven't heard
couple
either.
of Torrington fires, but the cooking thing has been very big in both Scottsbluff and Gering. Both unattended cooking, people falling asleep, whatever, you know, the turkey coma and continuing to cook. But that's definitely been on our minds lately, and looking at some of the different ways we can prevent that or lessen the effects of something like that causing injury or worse. So we've been very happy about the fact that our most recent fire in Scottsbluff, anyway, had good working smoke detectors in their home, and that's not something we've seen a lot lately, unfortunately. So the message we're trying to get out is making sure you have good working smoke detectors in your home, because when these happen, when these happen while you're sleeping or whatever, we want that some mechanism in there to be able to wake folks up and make sure they can get out of the house safely.
Yeah. And are there any, when it comes to cooking, are there any methods that are more prone to accidents as opposed to others? You know, slow cookers you wouldn't think would be an issue, but I suppose they could be, because you've still got electricity involved in that.
Fair. Most often it's the things on the top of the cooktop.
Sure.
In the oven, generally that's contained. People have the lid closed. Anytime there's a fire, just turn that oven off. Leave everything in there. Call the fire department. Anytime it's something on top of the cooktop, be sure to, if you can safely do so, put a lid on it. Turn the burner off. But most importantly, get out of the home, get to a safe location, get the fire department on the way.
Yeah, and do not use water, because if there's grease involved in the fire, that's not a good idea. It'll spread the flames. It's
Absolutely,
never a good
absolutely.
idea.
And if anybody's looking for advice on types of smoke detectors, you know, you go to the local stores, and there's so many different types to choose from. There's typically 3 types of smoke alarms. One's a photoelectric, one's a ionization, and then there's dual sensor. Each type of sensor responds differently to, you know, photoelectric will respond well to a slow smoldering fire versus an ionization. Those respond well to fast flaming fires.
Sure.
Since we don't know what kind of type of fire that's going to be initially, the United States Fire Administration recommends either having a mix of both types or purchasing the dual sensor smoke alarms for when you go to replace those. Make sure you're changing those batteries every 6 months, and any detector or smoke alarm that's older than 10 years old should also be replaced.
That's some very good recommendations. We'll be right back with News Extra in just a moment. And we're back on News Extra, and my guest this morning is Anthony Murphy, the Scottsbluff Fire Marshal. Thank you again for joining us this morning. And we've been talking about ways to prevent fires in the home this holiday season, talking a little bit earlier about cooking fires, improper electrical use, making sure that especially as you're cooking, you pay attention to those things, and having proper smoke detectors in the home. Another thing that we want to talk about, 2 of them actually, are improper ash disposal and carbon monoxide. Let's talk about the ash disposal first.
Yeah, this time of year everybody's wanting to look for ways to save on that energy bill or just the enjoyment of sitting around a fireplace. I want to remind folks, make sure when you're using a fireplace, number one, I'm thinking back to the fire that was just recently in Morrill, making sure that you're using proper materials to start that fire with. Don't use any kind of lighter fluid, any kind of accelerant, anything like that. Make sure it's either the logs that are designed for that or the little discs that are designed for starting the fire. There's also a temptation right now with all your wrapping paper and cardboard tubes and boxes to throw those in the fireplace. Many of those burn far too fast and can spread beyond that firebox out into the living space. So make sure you're only burning the clean wood, clean seasoned firewood. The other thing, making sure when you're done with enjoying that fire that those ashes are cold before you put them in the dumpster. We recommend a metal can. Keep it away from the house. We've seen fires start, ashes on the back porch, different things like that before they get taken out to the dumpster. Make sure those are good and cold. Use some water if you got to. Make sure those are nice and cool before you put them in the dumpster. And use those fireplace as safety. Nebraska law requires that you want to make sure that you're getting a chimney inspected and cleaned at least once a year, and make sure that's done. Make sure those flues are open and that you're using them properly.
And one of the other things that we've had happen here fairly recently, and one of them very, very publicly, is carbon monoxide issues. Obviously different from fires, but can be deadly nonetheless.
Absolutely, and even in Nebraska as a state, we've had several deaths related to carbon monoxide poisoning. In addition to, one of the reasons for that annual chimney inspection is even if you haven't burned anything, you don't think there's a creosote buildup, there can always be bird nests and different things in there that you're not going to notice, and that can lead to carbon monoxide buildup inside the home, inside the business. Different things like that. So making sure you've got carbon monoxide detection in your home too.
Because it is a silent killer.
Absolutely.
Odorless. You're not going to know that it's there until potentially it's too late.
Absolutely. And another cause for it that we see this time of year is it's cold outside, so people go out to their garage, start their vehicles. Vehicles running inside the garage, that's going to spike any carbon monoxide levels in the home. Again, you won't know that it's there. Some of the common symptoms you want to look out for is, of course, this is cold and flu season, so you have that as a factor as well, but they say that the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning are very similar to those of having the flu. Headache, dizziness, exhaustion, several of those kind of symptoms are consistent with carbon monoxide poisoning. So
now, is it also more common to have carbon monoxide issues in newer construction homes, businesses, apartments, as compared to older homes, which tend to be a little bit more drafty?
Yeah, there definitely, that can be an influence. One thing that we're fortunate, if it's a newer home, usually the appliances are newer and that kind of thing, but that doesn't remove the maintenance aspect of it. So you can still have a bird's nest build up in an old home just as easy as you can a new home. So anything, Nebraska law, again, beginning last, I believe it was last January or perhaps the one before, requires carbon monoxide detection indoors. So anytime you have gas appliances, have an attached garage, anything like that, if you're all electric and have a detached garage, you really don't have to go through and invest that, but that doesn't prevent you from doing so.
Still not a bad
if you
idea
feel
to
more
have
comfortable.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a bad idea at all. So
Absolutely.
some very sound advice from Anthony this morning on a number of topics: proper ash disposal, having carbon monoxide and smoke detectors in place. Watching those cooking incidents to make sure that you don't have any issues pop up, and also proper electrical use throughout the home, especially here during the holidays with all the lights and everything else.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't include that bit of information. We all like the Griswold family Christmas light show.
Yes, we
so wanting to make sure you're being careful about those electrical circuits, especially in older homes where those weren't necessarily designed for the kind of amperage that we're running space heaters. Make sure those are being used safely. Any of the light shows, anytime you can go with an LED versus an incandescent bulb, you're drawing less electricity, less chance of a fire. Make sure you're using those in the way that the manufacturer recommends, indoor versus outdoor. There's a substantial difference.
A certain number of strings on any given outlet.
Exactly.
There are important things to follow.
Exactly.
Anthony, thank you very much for joining us this morning on News Extra.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.